Welcome back, Gooses and Goyles, to the Spawn of Fear. This video is going to be about my life's history and just to get to let you know a little bit about me. Disclaimer, I'm going to try to keep it as cheery as possible, but I've lived a life. I've lived an interesting life. And it is kind of sad, but like I said, I'm going to try to keep it upbeat. So, best way to start, well, as always, is from the beginning. My legal name literally is Venger, just like my brother's legal name is Zartan. My father was quite eccentric, and I couldn't thank him more for it. Now, when I was growing up, when I was young, like 3 or 4, I've always had a feeling that life, or just how I viewed the world, seemed alien to me. And that kind of followed me for the rest of my life. I am a weird person. I remember watching Rugrats as a young kid and thinking about the type of person I wanted to be. At like 3, 4 years old, watching Chucky and thinking to myself, I want to be like that guy. I did that with a bunch of other things. I saw different people and characters that weren't the most popular characters, but I did respect them for several reasons. For Chucky, it was the fact that the dude was a scaredy cat. As am I. But regardless of being scared, he always did whatever he needed to do whenever it was called of him. The next big thing I remember was when I first started school. Now, unlike most people, when they start school, they get to experience a thing called recess. Not me. I got to have recess for about 1 or 2 months in first grade when I first started school. I remember watching a TV show of my father, and he loved arts and crafts. To this day, he loves arts and crafts. Later on, I'll show you 2 sock puppets. That was one of the few things that we were able to keep from our fathers after everything pretty much went terrible. But yeah, he loved that stuff, and he ingrained it into us. I remember making those characters, those people that you fold a piece of paper in, and then you cut out a person, and then all people. I remember doing that, and our father was just like, hey, you want to take it a step up? So he started actually giving them weird crowns and whatnot, and started making the caricatures more intricate, and he had us do it, and I was really, really excited about that. And my life's dream was always to write. Even before I knew it was my life's dream, it was. So I took that idea, and I went to school, and I made a character for each and every one of my classmates. Now, that doesn't seem harmful or a reason why one person would miss out on recess for 2 years of their 2 years of their life, but it was for me. Because I just didn't stop there. I used the techniques that my father had showed me, and I had made each and every one of my classmates a character of themselves that looked just like them. The only difference, and now I can see it as being an issue, but back then I didn't, they all had red eyes and bat wings. I created a play and turned them into like stick puppets that you put on a little popsicle stick, and I got the whole class interested and ready to go. However, my teacher did not see it as a good thing, so I was told to stop immediately, and then I was taken, or my ability to have recess was taken away, and I was put in a room in the back of the school with an old decrepit teacher, and she made me sit there each and every recess writing a story. I believe that they were trying to beat the creativity out of me, or to beat the devil out of me. I don't know. It wasn't inherently evil. It's just I lived in Halloween Town. My father's house or trailer that we grew up was decorated with all black and skulls everywhere and Halloween stuff spewed across the walls. Like I said, my father was an eccentric person. But yeah, for 2 years I was inside that class. I never had a recess until third grade. And they finally just let me out of the class for who knows what. Maybe they just knew that they couldn't take my creativity away from me, and nor would I ever give it up. But yeah, for the very first 2 years of my school life, I had like 2 months of recess, then I didn't have it again until about halfway in third grade. That was the first showing of maybe wanting to be an author. Third grade, and I believe it was third to fourth grade, was a very tough year because that was the year that our mother had left. She didn't leave in a good way. She got several pounds of meat and hid it all along the trailer, and then she got a couple of nasty bugs that you never want to see inside your house, and she put them in there. So then she called CPS, and then they saw all this stuff, and then they took us away, but they gave us to our grandfather for a week. And there's a lot of things I'll say about my father. He was a very, very strong person. One of the strongest people that you will ever meet in your life. He did have an Achilles heel, though. It was gross stuff. Puke, vomit. Yeah, I just gotta say it, maggots, cockroaches, which were the things that my mom left inside the house. He woke up and had have to hold a small umbrella or something above his face in order to not have the cockroaches fall onto him, but the maggots were still crawling onto his couch. For a week, my father did everything within his power to clean up that house and get us back. Sadly, our mother didn't leave that as the only surprise. She told CPS that my father, since he was an eccentric person with a dark personality and tend to like dark things, she told CPS that my father thought that he was a vampire and he drank our blood, which obviously he didn't. But she wanted to hurt him by taking everything away from him, including me and my brother, and she couldn't care less about us because she had our sister, which I'll get to that later. Anyways, the next 6 months, my father was just had CPS breathing down his throat. Every week there was this guy that used to come over, and he'd be like a psychiatrist type of counselor, and he'd talk to my father. And after the first couple of sessions, he was just like, you're weird, but you're not drinking blood weird. They ended up showing, my father ended up showing him how much he really wanted to keep us, how much he wanted to be a father, which, we made an homage to our father inside of our story. He leads a pirate crew called the 187, and it stands for one of my dad's favorite thing to say, even though it was a bit weird to hear your father talk about it. It stands for 1 man, 8 children, by 7 different women. And the only reason why I bring that up is because me and my brother were the only 2 children of his. Technically, our sister doesn't come from his blood, but she is our sister. We don't think of her as a half-sister or anything else like that. And the way that she loved our father was just as much as we love our father. But yeah, we were the only 2 kids that he was ever able to raise, and I apologize deeply to all my other brothers out there, and even my sister, who ended up having to live with her biological father. They still kept in contact. Our sister would visit all the time, but back to the story. We were underneath the scrutiny of CPS for about 6 months. It came around to November, and I think third, fourth grade, it's still kind of hazy for me around that time, but we were told to write a thank you note for Thanksgiving to a person that really matters to you. Of course, I would do about my father. Why wouldn't I? My father was amazing. He's one of the best people that has ever walked this earth. And if you think otherwise, you didn't know him. I spent that entire week looking up big words that a normal third or fourth grader just doesn't know. And I spent an entire week not only learning them, but writing them down constantly, working on the note that I would give my father. And I did. And for the first time in my life, I watched my father cry. He was so strong that even with everything that happened with CPS, everything that happened with my mother, he kept it together for us. But in that one moment, I saw him break down for the very first time, tears streaming down his eyes. And I really do hope that he knew how much that he meant to me, because even though it was in third grade, those feelings never stopped. I never stopped thinking of him as the greatest father of all time. And I know inside another video I called my brother my role model, my hero, but he got those because sadly my father died. He was still right behind him. But like I said, my father was the greatest person who had ever lived. And the next time when the counselor came over, it was for his review. It was a whole new counselor who didn't know anything about the case, but had been talking to my dad a week prior, and it's just like, it doesn't look good for you. He showed her my Thanksgiving card. And then for the second time in my life, I watched my father cry. And I watched a woman that I've never met, who was middle-aged, cry too. And that's when I really do believe that that's the reason why I wanted to become an author. I've always had social anxiety. I've always had depression, even though I only got diagnosed for that when I was like 27, 28. But I had never been able to connect with someone at that level. And doing that not only with my father, but also with someone I didn't even know, that my words can actually make someone feel something, that solidified it. I was going to become an author. You might have heard from the other video with my brother that I wasn't the best brother. I had anger issues, and even though I still have them today, I have them under control. But back then, I didn't. And the anger got out of hand. And I remember one of the worst times that I had with my anger was the day after and it's hard for me to say this because my father was so strong. So strong. The dude was built like a fucking ox. I said I always had anger issues, and I'd always fight with my father. Always. I mean, if you're part of my family, you probably heard something about this at one point in time, or the many other times that happened afterwards. But we were a bit of a barbaric type family where fighting was like the life. And I remember my father telling me about when he got kicked out of his house was when he came home drunk one night, and his father tried to hit him in the face, and he had caught it. It was his moment of becoming a man. And foolishly, I thought the same thing was going to happen to me. I got into many fights with my father, but the one that I will remember for the rest of my life was the day that I thought that was going to happen. I got into a fight with him. Started arguing. Got up, and I had this way of like, boo, being like a monkey type thing, like getting like all your muscles up and try to pronounce yourself in a strong way. And my dad got up in my face, and I pushed him. He fell backwards, tripped over a toaster, landed right between his couch and the table that he had next to it. And instead of being the moment that I thought it was, showing myself that, and showing him that I was finally becoming a man, we both knew something was wrong. The next day, I wheeled him into the hospital. He was in a wheelchair, and I pushed him up, and I said, something you probably heard from the other video, my father was looked at. He looked like Tommy Chung mixed with Cheech Marin with the personality of Jack Black. And they looked at him with his red tinted glasses, his black skull cap, his black commander shirt, and his Resident Evil shirt with a V all the way down the middle, right to about here. And they looked at him and it's just like, this dude's a fucking junkie. He just wants pills. So they sent him back. Then it got to around Christmas. He became skin and bones, puking up yellow stuff, hives all over his body. He was barely even able to stay awake, barely even able to talk. Found out later after he was diagnosed when I was in ninth grade and I had to take him back to the hospital, and this time it was so bad that he literally spat out blood right in front of the nurse and the secretary, and they were just like, oh, you really do need help. I was picked up and taken back home to wait there for my brother. And I told them what had happened, and my brother was always the optimist, always. And he was like, maybe it's not that wrong, it's okay, we got this, he's got it, he's the strongest person in the world. And I snapped at him. I let my anger out at him. And it wasn't a good thing. Instead of reiterating stuff that's inside of the video called My Brother, when I talk about My Brother Zartan, you can go look up the things that are missing between these points in times, try to piece it together yourself. I just don't feel something many people should have to rewatch something that they've already watched. Anyways, I graduated. I get a job, my very first job at I Stanley, thanks to Michael Kenny, and I profusely apologize. I didn't know that I had such mental health issues beforehand, but I was there for like a day and a half, and the people that were training me was an old woman who was about to be forced out of the job, and another guy that I was evidently going to replace. Bad decision to tell them that while training someone, because they put me through the ringer. At one point in time, I remember, and this is a factory job, I was going between all, I believe, 4 stations by myself, and it was so terrible when they kept on doing random things to me to tease me, or just to make it, anytime I felt like I was doing good, they made me feel like I was failing, and I left in the middle of the next day. A day and a half is all I spent there, and like I said, I apologize to my Uncle Kenny. I did not know that I was going through that. There's only one way to find that out. Anywho, go to a job fair with my sister, her friend, and her cousin Ray. And it was for Sam's Club. And also to any employer who is watching this right now, I apologize. I really, really do. I have a way with words, evidently. I mean, if it's a business or professional type of situation, I can really, really kind of fool people about who I really am. And I usually got jobs because of it. But yeah, I got a job at Sam's Club, and I worked there for about 7 months. Then my father had to go through a heart surgery. He had his sternum cracked open and his ribs pulled out, and his body was opened up like that so they could do heart surgery. I remember being inside the hospital room with my father as he's basically telling everyone the final words that he may ever say to anyone. It didn't help that my father was always completely honest, especially with me. And, I don't blame my father. I'm actually very happy and grateful that my father actually saw so much in me that I still don't see in myself. He was always honest with me. When he got first diagnosed, unfortunately, we got an old medical book. So it was like, you're going to be living for 6 months and then you're going to die. Which the actual longevity for leukemia for someone like him in his stages was approximately 2 years. So it was just like, gave me a little bit of a heart attack for no reason. Said I don't blame the old man. I appreciate that I was given information that most people want. And for that surgery, I was told, but the doctors told him, he had roughly a 17% chance of surviving the operation. And that destroyed me. I remember me, my brother, and our cousin Ray going back to our house, and stupid children stuff to ensue on this part, because I was 17, 18 at the time, or something like that. I think I was still in school, or the story's out of place. Anyways, we took all of the old man's weed and we smoked and played D&B, and I remember watching the Bruno Mars Lazy song, and I'm sitting there just going like, bruh, this song's going for like 3 hours. And then after my cousin Ray stopped laughing, he was like, that's because I've had it on repeat for 3 hours. I was like, Dad got back home, thankfully, and got super pissed off because we smoked all of his weed, and that's the only thing he wanted to do to not think about his chest. Anywho, while working at Sam's Club, to return back to the story, I worked there approximately 7 months. No, that was the heart. No. Yeah, that was the heart surgery. 7 months. Oh, no, it was another surgery. Yeah, I approximately worked at Sam's Club for 7 months, and my father had another life-threatening surgery. And my grandmother Mary was supposed to pick me up, and I called in to work for it. Just like with the heart thing, surgery, I wasn't going to miss his surgery. I did. My grandmother forgot to pick me up. And I got fired because of it. And that's really when the downfall of my work history really starts. So I hadn't gotten diagnosed till my father died. I didn't know anything was mentally wrong with me. I never knew that. And my father, who didn't believe in mental health issues, just kind of said that I was being lazy, and I believed him. I believed everyone. I didn't realize the stuff that I was going through was actually something real. I just thought something inside my head, and I wasn't strong enough to be better than it. Anywho, getting next couple of jobs. I think if you count my jobs all the way up until my father died, I've had approximately 30 plus jobs. I'm sorry to all my previous employers. But yeah. A long time passed, and then job after job, failure after failure, me hating myself more and more and more, and it getting closer and closer to taking the big L on life. And it reached its boiling point after I got fired from Taco Bell, and I still don't like this. Don't blame your personal Taco Bell, but I just gotta say this. I was working 7 days a week, 9 hours plus each and every day. I did that for 4 months. Then my father started going through shock, and if you don't know what shock is, I could barely tell you what it is, but because it was so long ago. But my father would basically start shaking violently, and his mouth would start foaming. And at that time, everyone else had moved out, and I couldn't. And I don't blame my family members. I don't blame my brother and sister. I don't blame anyone who was around. It's just that he told everyone to go out and have a life. And I told him, no. I will be around you as much as possible. I will help you as much as possible. Even if I failed jobs and keeping them, I never failed my father. And I ended up losing my job. Like I said, my father went into shock, and it was around December. He had gone in shock like 4 or 5 times, and one of the times I had just barely gotten home, and I worked third shifts and whatnot. The house was empty. There was no one else there besides me and him, and I had to be there to move him onto his side and make sure that his airway was clear so he could breathe. However, Taco Bell didn't see it as me being a good son or a good person, even though there was several other people who I had worked with who worked first shift, the morning shift, and they were calling in for almost 2 weeks straight. I called in 4 times, and all 4 times was to make sure that my father wasn't dead, including our Christmas party that was set down in Beckley. I lived on Capitol. If you're not from Battle Creek and you don't know how big of a distance that is, while working third shift in a blizzard, it was a long way for me to go. Plus, my father was in shock. Anyways, they held that against me. I was fired December 26th, and I had so much hatred. It was one of my best jobs. It was one of my favorite jobs, and I was fired from it by trying to save my father's life. That's life, evidently. Anyways, you'll hear this in another video, my brother's video, when I talk about him. 5 days later, me and him are walking back and forth. I think it's just past the beginning of the new year, and we get into a fight. We went to the gas station to get like 2-liter bottles of Cokes, and me being the angry person I still was at that point in time, I threw his, he threw mine. We got into a fight. It got really bad. Something was mentioned about my job history. At that point in time, I had got a little Batman knife that, and then I took it and I stabbed myself 5 times in the stomach. I said from the other video, no one is allowed to hate my father for how he reacted. No one. He didn't believe in mental health issues. I do not blame him for that. I do not hold it against him for that. But I was bleeding out. My dad could only think that I was going to be wheeled off and put into a straight leather, a white straight jacket, and to be thrown in a padded room. And my brother was more focused on trying to stop the bleeding and crying and worrying about me. That was my very first time trying to take a free pass out of life. And it wouldn't be the last. Touchy subjects, trying to keep it light with all the weird faces and the movements, but yeah, it was a bad time. I can look at it now with happiness, or at least less sadness than before. But yeah, that one hurt. It really, really hurt. Like I said, I don't blame my father for hurting. What I blame is the fact that, and I don't know if most people know this, or If anyone else is I deal with, and I'm pretty sure the only people that really notice this is the people who are antisocial like me and my brother. But jobs really do look down at you, and the opportunities given to you and the availability to mess up is shrunk down when you can't talk to anyone or you prefer not to talk to anyone. So I blame Taco Bell for that. I blame the employees at Taco Bell for that at that point in time. Before that, I do remember a time, my very first panic attack before the Big L, or the trying the Big L. This one dude at Taco Bell I was working with at third shift, his name was Ben. He was a cool guy, and a nice guy at that. Just not the best worker, but it was cool. He had gotten the new Dragon Ball game, and I love Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is my favorite thing out there. Close competition with My Hero Academia. Talk about that later. But he had gotten the new Dragon Ball game, and he had invited me over. And the next day, I had a panic attack. I was just outside of Taco Bell, and there was a bus stop right down the road between the Taco Bell on Capitol. And so I was there, and I was thinking to myself, and worrying about this social interaction. I'm not good with people. I don't know how I'm going to act like that. And I end up blacking out. I don't know, that's the second time, but still. It's the most prominent one to me. I remember blacking out. There's moments of clarity through the memory. I was at Baker's Trailer Park, where I had originally lived. I went to Teal Run, where I had moved out to when I was working Sam's Club. And I walked all the way around Battle Creek that night. And then the next morning I'm waking up right next to our fence. It was a lot. Panic attacks are not fun. I don't recommend them. But yeah, hard. Anywho, I tried for a couple more years, a couple more jobs, a couple more failures. There's only one job I can really say is a success, and that's there's a Dollar Tree out in Battle Creek near Urbandale that I helped set up temporarily, but I call that one a win. I still didn't show up for the last day when the last day was just a party. Thank you for setting up the store. Social anxiety. It's not fun. Anywho, yeah, did that. I ended up having my very first girlfriend at 26. I'll mention this in a different video, but I am demisexual. And before I had that girlfriend, there was a sexual encounter that I had that was really embarrassing. Like, really, really embarrassing. I didn't know what being demisexual was until that point in time. And it wouldn't be the first time in my life, because my sister liked to make fun of me a lot. And she'd call me gay a lot. There's nothing wrong with being gay. It's just I don't think that I was. But at that point in time, I had to severely look into it because I couldn't finish the transaction, or it wasn't a transaction. Because I couldn't go through with it. Anywho, I get a girlfriend. I move out to her place. Don't want to get into her because it was a terrible relationship, my very first relationship, and at this current moment in time, it will be my only relationship. I got really hurt in that one. One of the things being is my second longest job up to that point in time was Dollar Tree. I worked there in Grand Rapids on 28th Street. I did that for approximately 5 months until my brother called me one day and telling me how bad my father's doing. Of course, I go straight there. One thing that was really a bad part about my relationship was that I never got to see my family, and that was more because of I didn't have the money or the ability, but my girlfriend did, but she didn't like my family or something like that, so I just wasn't able to see them. Went there, talked to my dad. Of course, he's got a stoic face. My father, so strong, and a really good liar. But yeah, went there, he acted like nothing was wrong, and I left. And I only left because my girlfriend, who had the car, was like, we took 2 weeks off. We visited your father for one single day. I guess that means we get to spend the next 2 weeks in Lansing. So we did that. And we spent like a couple days in Lansing, and then we went back to Grand Rapids, where we were fired from our job. Because even though we took 2 weeks off, trying to find another job to work during those 2 weeks was evidently a bad move against the manager at that time. So she just decided to straight up fire us. There was a lot of bad things, including a lot of abuse on my girlfriend's part towards me, but first relationship, so I didn't really know. Then it came to around March 2020. My brother called me again and told me my father was going downhill. I tried everything to get back as quickly as possible. Of course, my girlfriend at the time was just like, your father's dying. There's a beach house that I don't think I'll be able to go to once I go to Battle Creek. So we're going to go to the beach house, and then you're going to come with me, or otherwise we're going to break up, which, at this point in time, I really should have. Anyways, the weekend that I spend there, I'm waking up each and every night screaming because I'm having a dream about my father dying without anyone being there for him. My father had always been there for me, so of course I was going to be there for him. We leave the trip, we go to Battle Creek, and my father was actually doing really, really bad. So technically he had leukemia for 14 years. He was only diagnosed for 11 years. It was terminal chronic lymphatic leukemia, which I think is like the third or fourth stage of the leukemia, or something like that. It was near the end stage. And then the 2 months prior to me coming there, he had actually turned to acute, which, if anyone who has a family member with cancer, acute is the end. So I spent the next 2 weeks trying to be with my father as much as possible, talk to him as much as possible. I was even given the ability, because one of our favorite things was playing wrestling. I think I've mentioned that earlier. With all the created characters, he created characters with us, and he charged me with the ability of making his character Fear. And I did. I watched all the characters fight each other in a Royal Rumble, and just as always, Fear won. And it has been my honor and my pleasure since his death shortly after that each year we always get the next wrestling game. Each year I always create Fear. And each year we create the characters that we divided up, because our father just didn't create the one character. He was like us. He was eccentric, imaginative. He made a lot of characters, so me and my brother get to split them up, and each year I get to create his characters, and so does my brother, and we get to play a Royal Rumble where we do the same thing that we did with our father. We don't play, we'll watch. We'll watch the characters fight each other. It's been 6 years since his death. 6 years we've continued this tradition, and 6 years, Fear comes out first every single time. We see his entrance every single time. And it's the best part of watching the Royal Rumble. Anyways, to go back, I said for my brother video, I did mention my father dying and what happened to my brother. his girlfriend broke up with him. He wanted to take the big L on life, and I spend every day with him, talking to him, playing God of War, this, that, and the other thing. My relationship went down the tube. Who cares? It was between a girl that I haven't even talked to in 6 years, or my brother. I chose my brother. More stuff happened during then. I am unwilling to say at this moment in time because it's more personal information than anything. But yeah, I went to mental health care facilities. I got diagnosed. Me and my brother moved out into the arbors. We had a fight. I left. I lived with my friend. Got a job working fencing, which has been my longest running job to this day. So if any of my family members really want me to work, have me work with a good friend, because it worked. I worked there for like 5-6 months at a time, 3 times each. Second year I was working there was 2022. Got my job back again, was living with a friend. Chaos ensued. My brother was not put on the birth certificate. His girlfriend left him for a different man. And he was yet again very, very sad. Begged him to come down to Battle Creek. He did. We made a plan. As soon as his job started up, which was a seasonal job, we'd be heading back up there. The grandparents took his child away from him and pretty much said to him and his ex that, like, they're our children now. You can't do anything about it. Deal with it. Of course, they're wrong, but anyways, did that. Came back up here. Was homeless for 6 months. I tried to get another job. Ended up with another panic attack with me. Not to put a terrible image inside your head, but nude in the middle of the forest, not knowing where the fuck I am or how the fuck I got there. Panic attacks are terrible. Anywho, did that. I felt like a failure. Went back into a mental health care facility for a week. Got back out. Went to be homeless again. They offered me to have a halfway house, but it's just like, I did not come up here to get myself to be better. I came up here to get my nephew out of a terrible situation, to help my brother become the father that I know that he could be, the best father that he could be, to do something. And, you know, all the sadness of the jobs beforehand, all the times where my mental health issues got the better of me, it all led to this point in time in this apartment. 6 months being homeless in this apartment. I started writing the story. It was my brother's deal. You know, he didn't judge me for not having a job. He tried to understand my mental health issues. He was raised like by my father like I was. So we were raised not to believe that, but he gave it an earnest try, and he's honestly been trying for the past 3 years to understand where I'm coming from, the days that I have that I'm bad, and he's a great person. So he made a deal with me. I get to write the story here while he goes out and works, brings back the money, pays the bills, does everything. He just wanted me to make sure that I get to live my dream, and I get to do it with him. Because even though I wrote the first book, through editing, my brother got to add in his own points of view, and it made it great. He's got some great ideas. For me, I'm a dreamer. I dream big. I've got big ideas. Most of the time, they don't make sense. He's the one who draws the connections. He's the one who figures out the stupidity of what I'm trying to say and make it all work into a beautiful, wonderful storyline. And now we've got so many twists, turns, and connections that I honestly do believe that this is the greatest story ever told. Instead, my brother gave me a chance to live out my dream, and I'm going to do it. But it's just not my dream, it's our dream. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. The story wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. He is half of this story and will always be half. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. He is fundamentally the reason why this story exists. He's the reason why I'm still here. He's the reason why we've gotten to this point. And now that you've heard a little bit about my life story, or at least a brief summary for almost an hour, maybe you get to know us a little bit better. Know the reason why we're doing this. And then those who knew me beforehand, I hope this gives you clarity of the person that I am and the struggles I've had to deal with. And, I'm not the person that everyone still thinks that I am. I'm a person who's struggling to find their place in life, and my father saw something in me, and my brother saw something in me. And for the first time in my life, I'm seeing what they have always thought that was there. And I want to share it with you. I want you to tell me how you think, the things that you've dealt with, the hardships that have hampered you in this life, that you've had to get over, all the obstacles. Let me know. Let's talk. Let's say anything. Let's really try to get to know each other. Like I said, I believe this is the greatest story in the world. One day I would really like to be just like Ichiro Oda. I would like for people to know my name, but I will never be like any one of those people. I've lived on the dependency of others all my life, which means I barely had anything to myself all my life. Even with all the donations and money and whatever anyone decides to give to the story, it's not going to help me live in a lapse of luxury. No, it's going to help the story. And then hopefully I can help other people who are in the same situation as I. And hopefully others like my brother too. But thank you for listening to me ramble on for the past almost hour. I am Venger Fearkin. This is the Spawn of Fear. And thank you for watching. Have a great day.